2016 is a massive election year in the United States. As a matter of fact, it is a much more exciting and controversial presidential election when compared to the election of 2012. Basically what happens is that in 2012, you really had one party, the Republicans, who were competing in the primaries because no one really on the Democratic Party side competed against President Obama. But in 2016, the White House is open to any candidate. So you will get candidates, both Democrats and Republicans, fighting to be the party's nominee. However, the purpose of this discussion is not really to discuss who one should support or who one should not support, or which party one should be in favor of or not. The purpose of this discussion is to go behind the scene, the administrative part, the mechanical part in the making of elections. And we as Caribbean people, as well as immigrants in general, we love to discuss politics, especially on a Saturday night when we are having dinner, when we are chatting, when we are having a few drinks. We love to talk and boast about elections. As a matter of fact, elections in the Caribbean, more people go to vote in the Caribbean, that is in proportion to the population, than people of the United States. And one of the reasons so many people go to vote in the Caribbean is because they love electoral politics, they love to vote, and they love to discuss it. So around dinner tables since 2015, Caribbean American families have been discussing the 2016 presidential race. But there is behind the scene, and the first option when guys and ladies were talking and having family discussions about United States elections, one have to first say, the order of business, what state in the United States are you talking about? So if one say, okay, I'm voting in the primary, or I have voted in the primary, one have to ask, well, which state did you vote in? And the reason is this: every state is different. And we at Everybody's Caribbean Magazine, every year we do political articles at election time. And we get a lot of calls from immigrants, Caribbean Americans, asking us to clarify certain issues. So even though we are way past the primary, or we are still in the primary season to a certain respect, yet people are still asking, what is the difference between a primary, a caucus, and the straw poll? And even though we are immigrants, and even though we are immigrants, came from other countries and we were not born here, don't be embarrassed, because Americans who were born here, many of them do not even know the difference between the primary, the caucuses, and the straw polls. But to simplify it, it's simple. Primaries are conducted by state government. In other words, the government in each state conducts the primary. It is mandated. You have to follow state laws, and it goes down from the state government down to the municipal government, depending on the city you are in. So for the purpose of this discussion, we are really talking about New York State. Now, in other states, you have what you call caucuses and straw polls. Without going into the intricacies of straw polls and caucuses, the difference between them and the primary, as I said, the primary is controlled and run by the government. You have to obey governmental laws. But in the caucuses and straw polls, it is conducted by the political parties themselves. So the political parties could create their own law, change it, break it, change it, renew it, do what they want with it. And it's different. So to simplify, the primary is run by local state governments, whereas caucuses are run by the parties, whether it is the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in different states. Okay, so now that we understand that, the next question or the next answer one usually try to get answer is this. Every state, or most states, their election laws are different to the other state. So let us take New York State, because most of you, the viewer, many of you are in the New York State area. So I know you will be thinking of New York State. So in any discussion, one have to ask, what state are you referring to? So for example, in South Carolina or in the Carolinas, they have what you call an open primary, meaning that you do not have to be a member of a political party. As long as you're an American citizen, you have the age and you can vote, you can go in any primary and vote. You do not have to be a registered member of a political party. Also, in some states, regardless to what party you are in during the primary, you could just go and vote for any party, the candidate of any party you like. New York State is different. It is what you call a closed primary. A closed primary, meaning you have to be a registered Democrat or you have to be a registered Republican in order to vote in New York State primaries. Now, what is tricky about the New York State primary, in one breath we are saying to you, or the laws are saying to you, if you are a Republican, you must vote in the Republican primary. You cannot vote in the Democratic primary. And if you're a Democrat, you cannot vote in the Republican Party. But there are voters who choose not to be a Democrat, and there are voters who choose not to be a Republican. They are independents, or they may be belonging to smaller parties. So in this case, they cannot vote in a primary. But then they can vote in what you call the general election. And here again it is confusing, because 2 months before the general election in New York State, especially New York City, you are told that you're a Democrat, you can only vote for the Democratic candidates who are running in the primary. But less than 2 months later, in 6 weeks' time, you are told that you can vote for any candidate in the general election, which is true. But given partisan politics, so if you're a voter and you go to your elected politician, and that politician belongs to, let us say, the Zebra Party, that politician will mislead you and tell you in the general election you must vote for the Zebra Party. But in the general election, even though you're a member of the Zebra Party, you can vote for the Purple Party if you choose to, because you can vote for anyone in November. So that is always a confusion. And as I said, not because we are immigrants, we have to be embarrassed that we do not know the laws. Because many Americans who come, especially people from other states who are living in New York State, they get confused. So in November, you can vote for any member that is on the ballot in November. Whereas in September, in June, and the recently held election in April, you only could have voted for the candidate that you were registered, the candidate of the party of which you are a member. So we in New York State have just experienced the primary. The primary was in April, but there are 2 more primaries in New York State in 2016. Actually, there are 4 major elections in the state of New York in 2016. Now, on April 19th, New York was all excited, whether you are in New York City or in any way New York State, because we had what you call the presidential primaries. And this is a massive year. It's a presidential year. And in presidential year, in the state of New York, as well as in many other states, there are more than 1 primaries. So in the current presidential year, there are 4 primaries in New York State, plus the general election in November, or every November. So in this presidential year, there have been 4, or there will be 4 primaries, or 3 primaries in New York State. in April, which was the presidential primary. In June, it is the federal primary, meaning members who are running for the United States Congress, the United States House of Representatives, or the United States Senate. They are competing against each other to be the party's nominee. Then in September, the first week, or just between the first and second week of September, there is the New York City and the New York State primary for members running for City Council, for New York State Senate, for the state legislature. As a matter of fact, to make it simplify, anybody who is running for even dog catcher, come September, they can participate in the primary if they are candidates. So in September, you have many Caribbean Americans are running for City Council, running for Congress, running for the New York State Senate, running for District Council, running for community board members, running for this and running for that. And then you have the general election in November, where the winners of the primaries compete against each other in November. So focusing again on that November election, the November election is commonly called the general election. So the first Tuesday in November of every year, there is an election. It is called the general election. But before that, there are primaries to determine the members of each of the party who will represent their respective party in November. So I hope we all understand the primary system in New York State. So in any presidential year, expect to have 3 primaries in New York State and the general election in November. In New York State, it is April, June, and September. Those of us who love to go on Eastern Parkway in the carnival, sometimes we all are frustrated on Labor Day, and after Carnival on Labor Day, we say, hey, all the politicians who are on Eastern Parkway preventing the bands from coming down. And there is a reason why. The same politicians really who do not support the Carnival, but come Labor Day, they are there marching. You know why? They are looking for votes, because the New York City and the New York State primary is about 3 or 4 days after Labor Day, after the Carnival. So any politician in their right mind will be marching down Eastern Parkway. As a matter of fact, former First Lady and former Senator Hillary Clinton, she marched down Eastern Parkway in the Carnival on 2 occasions. And you know why? Because then she was a candidate seeking to be the Democratic nominee for the role of to represent New York State in the Senate. And so this is why she was there campaigning. So for the year 2016, as well as any other presidential year or any regular year, you will always have politicians, much more politicians on Eastern Parkway than, let us say, in the Irish Parade or in another parade, because the West Indian Carnival is just 3 or 4 days before the New York City primary. So let us not fool ourselves to believe, well, these politicians love us so much. Half of the time, they do not even know which flag they are flying. I mean, I as a journalist, I've interviewed many of them. It's nice to wave your flag down Eastern Parkway. So some of them do not know the difference between the Haitian flag, the Guyanese flag, the Jamaican flag. Or if you ask, well, what flag are you displaying, they will say the Jamaican flag, even though it could be the Grenadian flag. So there is always the humor during Carnival time. But this particular year, the presidential race year, is much more of an exciting election. Now, Caribbean people also love to boast. Before I became a citizen, I used to hear friends bluffing and talking on radio, having a drink on a Saturday night or trying to impress each other, saying, oh man, These people don't know what they're doing. I am not a citizen, but I voted. Perhaps they did vote. The question is, did the vote count? And the answer is no. So getting back now to New York State and New York City, if you are voting in the primary, you must be a member of a specific political party, that you have to be that member, and then you are eligible to vote in that party's primary. But you can go and make a big stink and say, I have to vote. You could make the big, as a matter of fact, believe it or not, you could just arrive from the planet Mars, or you could come from Timbuktu, or you could just arrive on the plane from St. Vincent, or you could have you could be a ghost and say, I need to vote, and I must vote. And the election person on election day, they may say, sir, madam, we check your name isn't here, so you cannot vote. And you are saying, no, I must vote. Well, legally and technically, yes, they can vote. The question is, would their vote count? So here is the trick. You don't want to argue with a person. So they vote by what you call affidavit. And what is an affidavit? An affidavit, in legal terminology, is really a document testifying that you are speaking the truth. You are saying whatever you put in the affidavit is true. And if it is not true, you could be taken into a court of law for misleading the public. So yes, so let us say Joan goes to vote, and she said, well, I am a Republican and I need to vote. And they say, well, madam, this election today, there are no Republicans in the primary. You are a Republican, you cannot vote. This is a Democratic primary. And Joan is running up and down that I must vote, you are taking away my rights. So yes, they will ask her to vote by affidavit. And there is a reason why. And this goes back now to segregation and the laws. Under the American Right to Vote Act, it is called the American Right to Vote Act, it states that no voter should be turned away from the polls. And the reason for this is historic, because in the South, those of us who know the racism and the right to deny people to vote in the South, they said you must vote and let the courts decide after. So as a result of that, you could be a dog, but you put on a human outfit, and you could talk and you say, well, I have to vote. You must vote. But the key stuff here, will your vote count? And the answer is no. Because when you are a voter, they will give you the ballot, and then you will go to the scanner, or before that you will register the candidate you are voting for. In New York State, that is. Then you will take your ballot, your paper ballot, and you will put it in the scanner, and the scanner, you will vote. The scanner will count your vote. But that is if your name is there, you had no hassle. But if you come and you say, well, I just arrived from Grenada, I'm a citizen, I must vote. So your name is not on the registration list, you cannot vote, and you insist on your vote. So they give you what you call the affidavit. Then you sign that who you are, and then that affidavit, you cannot go to the scanning machine. They will take that affidavit, put it in a large, big brown envelope, and at the end of the night, it goes down to the Board of Elections. And then 3-4 months later, you may get a letter, or you will get a letter from the Board of Elections stating, sir, we want you to know that your vote was not counted because we have no records that you are a voter. Or let us say, in this case, you are a voter in truth, but you were a Democrat, but you happen to be in love with the Republican nominee or the Republican candidate, so you decided, well, you will jump the party. But under New York state law, you cannot jump the party as in the South or in the Carolinas, for example. So you must vote for the party you're a member of. And this is why on election time you will hear people say they were turned away from, they couldn't vote. But that is the reason. But under the American right to vote, no voter shall be turned away from the poll.